Should we just get into it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the 7th episode of Unplugged. I didn't forget this time.
No. Not saving it for the end.
Nope. Right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning. All right.
Today we are talking about the Eversolo F2. I know it's been ages since we reviewed that. Or as they say in Fosse time, 6 new amps since Sunday. So I'm going to lead off with my thoughts about the Eversolo. You know, I actually liked the Eversolo.
Really?
Don't act surprised.
No, you don't share much with me during the week, so I had a feeling because you didn't complain about it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't ever look to you and say, this sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's always a good sign.
Everyone in the comments right now is like, what have you said sucks?
Oh, plenty of things. And it's not like you don't know. You just got to pay attention. Yeah. I think this is an interesting first outing for Eversolo. Mm-hmm. You know, this is their first amplifier. I want to talk about the style just to...
Oh, right.
I mean, not even just like the looks, but the form factor and some of the things that you touched on in your review.
Yeah.
You know, I do agree with you that I think that they missed an opportunity to develop an amp that looks really like it belongs to the Eversolo brand.
Yeah.
Rather than coming out with what appears to be a rebadged Stark Audio product. And for the record, I have never heard anything from Stark. Honestly, I didn't even know that they existed until I read on Eversolo's website that between Eversolo and Stark, they've come to the conclusion that this amp is warm sounding, which I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, I digress. I still like the design. Mm-hmm. I actually prefer its slightly larger size over the miniature versions that
the smaller Class D amps.
The ones that come with a separate power brick. That I don't really think these small amp pretenders are actually solving clutter and space issues.
Yeah, especially when all of these smaller amps are never photographed with the brick.
You have to love product photography.
Gotta love it.
You know, it's kind of like Instagram versus reality. But getting back to Eversolo, what I think's really happening here is that they realized that they needed to compete with the IEMAs, the Fosses, the Doak Audios of the world, and they needed to be careful with that price tag. For people who are hyper-focused on these very, very small amplifiers, I think for them, they're going to see this product as being too expensive.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, how can you compete with...
$69, $99? Yeah, I hear it. I hear you for sure. I just find it interesting that they went with Stark Sound. And again, I don't have any experience with Stark Sound, same as you. I just find it very interesting because, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, Eversolo appears to be a brand that is trying to position itself more in line with traditional hi-fi, but on the less expensive side than it is trying to compete with, say, the Fosses or the IEMAs of the world. And in that case, I'm actually kind of surprised that for their first amp, knowing that they needed a partnership, that they didn't go with one of the more established brands when it comes to like Class D modules, like Ice Power or HiPex. These are two platforms that definitely have upmarket appeal, but don't break the bank, honestly. They really don't. I think you could have brought the F2 to market at the exact same price point with a module that maybe had a little bit more brand cachet.
Well, I think one of our viewers, Dana B., who left a comment recently, feels similarly to you, what you just said, and that they say, I've been observing the ascendance of Class D amplification, and it seems to me that post ICE, HiPex, and Purify, this example breaks no new ground and adds little to the Class D story.
Yeah. I mean, look, Class D is one of those things. I mean, every amplifier class has its pros and cons, and it has its ability for designers to say, oh, I've done something different with it. But more so, I think, than Class A or Class AB. Class D is full of not only opportunity, but also wild claims about, ooh, we cracked it, we changed it, we're better. That I just don't think occur as much with more traditional Class A or AB style amplifiers.
Well, I want to continue on with some more questions from our viewers.
Okay.
I felt like these were some of the more thought-provoking observations we received.
Okay.
So starting with two of my favorite viewers.
Okay.
First up is Dwayne Cleckley. I mean, he's a gem.
Yeah.
Dwayne says, it seems that many of these smaller amps seem to fit small rooms and near-field listening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we will get to a space where we'll see these smaller amps that are more capable of serious performance across the spectrum and deliver for larger speakers or rooms? In other words, what's the future of the industry from this perspective? And then one of my other favorite viewers, Brian Lewis, says, these inexpensive amps have taken a new life in this day and age. There is room for all of these products. What I have come to learn at these types of amps tend to fall apart when pushed. But for the most part, most of us listen at levels around 80 dB or less. So this is a great budget amp that will please most individuals. Given the influx of these types of amps and the speed to which they seem to be coming to market, and he says, I speak for myself only, it gets to be a daunting task as to which one to pick. How would you rate this amp compared to a slightly, and he admits very subjective, more expensive Class AB amp with less power? Do you think you would have the same review opinion?
I agree. It's very daunting that a lot of these are coming to market so fast. And it has a very fast fashion feel to it for me. And while that's exciting, because there's always something for your brain and your eyes and your ears to digest, I am not sold that it's actually a really good thing. Anyway, yes, it is very daunting, the speed in which all of these things are coming out. But I do agree. Below 75, 80 dB, smaller room, average listening, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the F2. And I hope that came across in the review. Because in everyday scenarios on most speakers, so long as I didn't ask it to do too much, I too was very happy with its performance. It was solid. It always worked. And for the most part, no matter the genre of music, I also thought it sounded really good. I especially liked it for jazz and piano. I really did. Is there a more comparable, maybe slightly more expensive Class AB amp that I think is better? Yeah, it's one I don't believe I mentioned in the review, but we're starting to evaluate a new Rotel A11 Tribute integrated, and I mean, it's not even close. Now I get that that's an integrated, and it has other features that the F2 on its own doesn't have, but we are talking about a relatively similar price point, even though the Rotel technically has half the power. The Rotel can play all the way up into the 100 dB ranges on any speaker we had in-house, save for maybe the B&W 801 signatures. It never wavers. It never falters. And in my opinion, I do think it sounds better. So getting back to Dwayne, do I think that there's going to be a time where the IEMAs, the Fosse's, the toppings of the world get to, say, the Rotel stage? I do. And I believe that because of, getting to the second question, the sheer pace with which they are churning product out. And and here's kind of my problem, instead of what I feel is a product cycle where they are letting a product be out in the world for 2 or 3 years and really developing what that next step is going to be, they're basically doing running changes and calling them like version 2s. And so every step along the line, it really does feel like you're not getting a new amp, you're just getting the amp you probably should have gotten initially, but it didn't necessarily have all of the kinks worked out of it. You know what I mean? Like this new Fosse amp that just came out, the monoblock, which we have, like even in like the initial rollout and marketing push for it, like it has an issue with its power supply feeding 2 amplifiers. Now, I don't know how you don't catch that before sending those products out. Nevertheless, they're out there now. Now, Fosse has issued statements all over the net saying like, we're going to fix that and don't worry. And if you kickstart and whatever, do that, you know, it's not going to have that problem. Nevertheless, it still had that problem. It still had that problem before going out the door. That's just weird. That's like, to me, the cake isn't done. It shouldn't have come out of the oven.
I totally agree. And I think that's what makes some of these types of products very difficult to cover, because the frequency with which these lesser expensive products, small little amps come out that seem to be Class D based, they come out so fast that you would never, I think, give a pass to a more traditional company.
Yeah.
If they did that, you would likely see it as, or feel as if you've just become their personal R&D department.
Yeah.
And that's where I have a problem, you know, because I don't think that that's very professional. I just don't see the time being taken to make sure that the products they're coming out with are up to snuff, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that there should be more quality control. There needs to be longer development times, and this sort of move to I'm just going to open my own forum and then have all of my customers tell me what's wrong with something, and I'll worry about fixing it later.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
I mean, it's a cheaper way to go for sure, because you're earning money while you're basically getting to sell your development. And most people have to pay for development. You're getting to sell development.
Yeah.
And that's where I say it's kind of unfair, because not to pick on Rotel, if you're watching this, I'm just using you as an example. But if the A11 Tribute came out every 6 weeks as the A11 Plus, the A11 Pro, A11 Plus Ultra Pro, A11 Plus Ultra Pro Tribute every 6 weeks, even if it got better every time, eventually people are going to burn out. People are going to be like, will you just make it right the first time? Honestly, I don't think that people would sit for more than 1 or 2 product cycles like that if it was from a Rotel. But it really does seem like a lot of these other brands, I mean, they can just hit you every 3-4 weeks and no one seems to care. That is a huge shift that I'm witnessing enthusiasts willing to make, because that is not something I believe they would have tolerated a decade ago.
I totally agree. But touching on Dwayne's comment and something you said about basically the future of the industry as it relates to these smaller Class D type of amps, I think that at some point, the very low price tag we see on these products, it's going to rise.
It's already happening, and I don't know how many people have started to do the math, but like these new Fosse monoblocks, which, full disclosure, we have. I have no comment on them. I literally have not plugged them in. But I believe you're talking about $300 to $350, because you are going to need 2 unless you want to listen to old-timey mono. You're talking about $300 to $350. And again, that may not seem like much, and it isn't in the grand scheme of things, but now you need to talk about a preamp, and some of you might like this type of preamp, and then you're going to want your own streamer on top of it, and then you're going to have all of the ancillary cables to hook some of these things up before you even get to your speakers. And by that point, even in the ultra affordable realm, you may be looking at a total cost of ownership that's pushing $1,000. And at that point, that opens up the conversation to a huge swath of products that now have to be compared. And when that happens, that's when you find out, like, hey, do I want to spend $700, $800, $900 on a total system that has a very niche use, or do I want to spend that kind of money on something that's going to work no matter what my interests are that given day?
We had a few questions about the XTZ amp that we reviewed seems like forever ago.
3+ years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Curious about how this one compared. For example, Dameyer asked, I know it's been a long time,
Yeah.
and it would probably be from your memory, not a head-to-head, but how does the F2 compare to the XTZ Edge A2 300? I don't know if you want to dive into that, or why we aren't really referencing that amp anymore.
Yeah. So we didn't bring that amp up for 2 reasons. The first one being, yes, it has been ages since we've reviewed that, and I would be going off of memory, and I try really hard not to do that whenever possible. But the other reason is we no longer use those amplifiers. Because in our experience, and this is just our experience, and I've shared this with some people in the comments, and they've shared that their experience is different than mine, and that's great. But in our experience, both of our XTZ amps, which we acquired and made our own as a reference 2, 3, 4 years ago, both of them developed pretty severe noise issue and channel dropouts. And it happened over the course of about 8 months to a year since our review. We have amended those reviews. If you go back in the description, I believe Kristi has left a statement on those to be aware. But it's just not a product that we use as a reference. But if you have them, you like them, they did not develop those problems for you, then I would say, because they're ICE power module based, they are going to have a smoother demeanor, probably one that you would classify, or one that may have a little bit more of that warm sensation if you were to directly compare them to the F2. I don't believe that the high frequencies are going to be quite as extended through the XTZ as they are through the F2. That, when paired with a brighter speaker, may result in excessive treble or worse fatigue. Fatigue was not something that I ever really experienced with the XTZ amps when they were functioning properly, and we put them on bright speakers all of the time, where I don't think that I would go so far as to say that about the F2, but that's about the best I got.
Well, picking up on on the F2, is the F2 warm?
No.
It's not.
No, I don't know who in whose ever marketing department thought to make that statement, but it's not warm. It's not warm. Mm-mm.
No, I wouldn't classify really any of these Class D amps as warm. I've never felt that way about them. I think you get that from Class A. Class AB, that's more typical.
Tubes for sure.
Tubes, 100%. But yeah, I didn't quite get the warm classification.
Yeah.
What speakers do you think would be maybe the best for the F2? Michael Gochez asked, Andrew, would you say the small boost in the high frequencies at high volumes may be a good match for use with speakers with warm or rolled off highs? Another user, they ask, how did the amplifier behave with the Focal Aria Evo X number 2 speakers? I'm interested in your opinion. I can answer that real quick.
Yeah.
Didn't like it.
Yeah.
Didn't like the pairing, but that could have been the Focals. Who knows? And then lastly, Mr. JD says, thanks for mentioning the sound performance at low listening volume levels. It's the part of every amp review that I listen for. I'm looking for an amp that is really special at low to mid volume levels. I have fantastic, efficient bookshelf speakers. Specifically, he has the Heco Salon Rev 3, but I'm still looking for the right amp. Any recommendations up to $3,500?
Oh, shoot.
Which is pretty
I mean,
massive
that's almost
budget.
everything. Okay. The Heco budget, 3,500, low volumes. I mean, this amp, I don't know how it would pair with a Heco. I mean, this amp is, a Class D is going to, on some levels, this amp especially, going to be okay at those lower volumes. It's really when you start pushing it that my recommendation starts to become a little softer. So,
Or it comes with an asterisk.
Or it comes with an asterisk. And so in that instance, this could be something that might be worth checking out for you. Heck, if you want something that had the same relative performance as the F2, but seem to have a greater sense of dynamic oomph at those lower volumes. The Emotiva Basics A2 was that amp.
You know which one I would recommend?
What's that?
The Technics, the less expensive one.
Yeah,
we
the
reviewed.
70. That's a full integrated. That's got everything you need in one package.
Isn't it Class D as well?
It is, yeah, technically it's a Class D amplifier. That's fantastic. That amp slayed at low volumes. I find the Rotel A11 at the moment to be pretty exceptional at low volumes. I mean, $3,500, I mean, shoot. I mean, you can go all the way up to a Yamaha 2000A. That's like endgame style amplifier, in my humble opinion. Like that amp just kicks ass. Going back to other speaker pairings, yes, these Class D amps would appear to maybe be decent pairings for speakers that have roll off in the treble. Like I point out in the review, I show Polk R200s, which I don't think anyone, I haven't heard anyone classify those as bright or even remotely fatiguing. So, but I've also heard people classify that speaker as like, oh, it's so boring. It's so boring, it doesn't do anything. Maybe pairing it with the F2 or a similar style Class D amp might spice it up a bit. I don't know. I definitely wouldn't put this on like a previous generation B&W 600 series. I don't even know if I would put it on the current generation 600 series, which I actually like over Gen 2. But I just don't know if I would do that because I, like you, I didn't care for the F2 on the Focals all that much. But a Polk R200, yeah, I could probably live with that forever. It was fine with Q Acoustics. Q Acoustics paired very nicely with the F2. So even the Q50, what are they, 5020, 5030, whatever the bookshelves are, their entry level line, I think you'd probably be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it with the Concept 50.
Yeah, was a real nice.
Yeah, that was a fantastic pairing.
But to be fair, the Concept 50s, they might be the most Swiss speaker of them all, in that they're just neutral. They get along with everybody.
Well, I want to end with a few more technical questions.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
You'll do your best. I know you will. Eric S. asks, does the treble go up at higher volumes, or does it run out of usable current to drive and control the woofers?
In my experience, when compared to two different control amplifiers, one being the Basics A2, the other being the Crown 1002 XLS Drive Core 2, at volumes measured in the near field on Q Acoustic Concept 50s, with every measurement being exactly level matched to every other measurement, at volumes of 65, 75, 85, and 95 dB at 1 meter, the F2 repeatedly had a 1 to 2 dB skew, bump, increase in the measured response of the Q Acoustic. I don't have a $30,000 AP bench here where I can magically be like, look, we're going to hook it all up and I'm going to show it to you live. That's just not a level. I could, I guess. At that point, I'm more of a scientist than a hobbyist. I'm more of a scientist than, say, an enthusiast or someone that really ultimately just loves music and movies.
Isaac Sykes says, I would like to know how the amp performs when it's bridged. And I would like to know if or why not, when an amp that you review has the ability to be bridged, that the performance in that operation isn't detailed or reported.
It was not tested bridged because I only have the one. Full disclosure, this is a product that Eversolo sent to us for the purposes of review, and they only sent one. I know that it can be bridged. I know that that is a plus for it, but if I don't have two, like I said, I don't listen in mono. So that is why it's not there.
Okay, I have one last question for you.
Okay. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah, grab your butts.
Yeah, hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butts. Okay, at Stone Ager 90.
Okay.
First off, they reference a particular timestamp in the review.
Let me guess. The graph?
Yes, 433 to be exact.
The graph. Okay. All right.
Stone says, I'm not seeing what you're saying about the treble measurement. The plots have a different offset that looks like a volume discrepancy. The profiles are very similar, but there are some visible deviations between the two based on the spacing. The offset looks consistent in the upper mid-range, so it's hard to see what you're describing. If the statement is that there is a treble spike with Class D amplifiers, a plot comparing two Class D amps isn't going to demonstrate your point. Is there an extended plot available?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I made a judgment call. I figured if I'm going to say in the video that I believe there is a increase in treble energy with the F2, at least sonically, it definitely into my ears and on our speakers did seem to have a rise or just a little bit more treble, that I should probably, hopefully be able to show it to you. And so when I measured the amp against the Crown, against the Emotiva, amps relative in its price and power, when I'm looking at the full 20-20 view of the graph, at first glance, yes, all three amps do appear to trace one another. In fact, from 1 kilohertz down, so 20 hertz base to 1 kilohertz, which is kind of the upper mid-range on your way to treble, it's actually very hard to tell any of these amplifiers apart. But even on the full view, the F2 did seem to separate just a little bit from the almost muddy black line that the Emotiva and the Crown shared. And it was just seeing that little hint of green or red or whatever it was kind of pop up there at the end that I felt the need to okay, I'll zoom in. Because like you, and like I say in the review, this may or may not be audible, but I could see just that little variation, that little deviation. And so when I zoomed in and I saw that deviation, that variation was like 1 to maybe 2 dB in spots, I was like, well, is that what I'm hearing? Is that enough? I don't know, but it felt germane to the conversation, so I shared it. I do the best that I can in trying to illustrate my points because I know subjectivity is something that a lot of people really like, and I know that a lot of people don't like it. And so as I've said in other videos and other unplugged episodes, is that I don't show you our in-room responses to stand on any kind of hill and say, I'm right, someone else is wrong. I show it in hopes of being able to give those people that want a visual representation of what I'm about to describe something to look at so that they can go, oh yeah, that tracks. If that's what it measured in his room, yeah, I could see him having that response. I don't necessarily say that this is the frequency response of the speaker or an amp or this or that. It's just this is what all of these things did in my room, and it's just kind of a way of me backing up what I'm saying. To be fair, it is my understanding that there are measurements on the internet of this particular module, not maybe this amp specifically, but the module inside it, that sort of track with what I described and what I anecdotally showed in my graph at 433. So I'm a little bit at a loss at times with some comments about if I'm tracking with better data or benchmarks, why there's a problem with how I'm coming to my conclusion when it appears many people have already come to the same conclusion. That part confuses me. I don't know if there's any way to really explain that, but nevertheless, I don't think I'm alone on an island with my kind of takeaway about this and some other amps for the record. And I definitely have not been wildly off in the in-room speaker responses compared to things like Klippel measurements and stuff like that, where they show like a projected in-room response. A lot of times our measurements kind of track with that stuff. Now, I'm never going to say that our measurements are law or our measurements are reference or, benchmark. I'm just, again, it's a visual aid. It's a visual aid to try and show you what I'm now going to subjectively, using adjectives, explain what I heard.
Okay. Well, Stone has one other follow-up question that came in, I think, actually today before we started filming.
Okay.
The follow-up question was, why go with the Crown as the comparison amp instead of a Class A or AB? For example, something along the lines of an Iota VX.
Okay. Plain and simple, Crown, especially the XLS Drive Core series, is the amplifier that I have the absolute most experience with in my entire career. I have had a Crown XLS Drive Core amplifier in my system as part of my reference for over 20 years. I have put my Crown amps on AP benches. I know exactly what they can do. I know that they overperform in terms of their power. I know that they are absolute monsters on a bench. And I know that other companies, because of my affinity for Crown, have actually purchased them and used them in comparison testing while developing their other amplifiers. I trust Crown. That is why I used it. I get what you're saying. I do. I don't have an Iota. Honestly, full disclosure, I'm going to have to Google that. I have no idea what that amp is. I've heard of the name, the brand. I don't know that SKU. And so I went with what I thought was comparable in terms of price, cross-shopping, and power, because I wanted people to be able to have, like, I could buy an F2, I could buy a Crown, or maybe I could buy an Emotiva because this is my budget. That is it. That is the extent of the thought that went into it. I trust Crown. I know that amp intimately, and so it is a baseline for me.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think that covers everything.
All right. So that's it. That's episode 7, lucky number 7 of Unplugged.
Bye.
Bye. Tune in Sundays, guys. Thank you so much for watching. But yes, see you on the next video.